Hi, good morning. Welcome to the EpiDoc tutorials sessions. The full program of EpiDoc tutorials can be found at the link at the bottom of this screen. It's also given below the YouTube video if you want to have a link that you can copy or click on. And in today's session, Irene is going to talk to us about the encoding of the identifier of a text-bearing object in an epigraphical papyrological edition, which normally involves repository and similar kinds of information. So, Irene.
Thank you. So for expressing the identifier of the support of an inscription, in EpiDoc we use the MS identifier element, which goes inside the MS desk, the manuscript description, inside the TI header of an EpiDoc edition. And just to show here where this information could go in a traditional edition, here we see it highlighted. And here we have two kinds of information combined together. So we have as a heading the last recorded location, which includes both the last recorded location, but also the repository, which coincides with the last recorded location in this case. So inside the manuscript, inside the MS identifier, we almost always have the repository element, and this is usually required because all the manuscript description part derives from the TI manuscript description, which was originally thought for manuscripts which were conserved in libraries. So it was an information that was almost always present, but it can be omitted in the cases in which the MS name is used instead, for cases in which we do not have a repository and an ID number for that item, but we have a name that identifies such object. And the ID number, the ID no, is recommended, and it could be the inventory number, the registration number, some kind of identifier that identifies such item. And it can also have a type attribute. The ID no could have a type attribute inside which we could specify what type of identifier it is. It may be useful if we use different types of identifier, for example, the current inventory number and the previous inventory number, which may be found in literature, but which is not correct anymore. So we can use type for things like that. And here we have a very simple example. So we have a manuscript identifier inside which have the repository, which in this case is the Hanya Archaeological Museum. And we have an ID no with a value E81, which is the inventory number of this inscription. But we can also provide some more information. For example, we can also specify the country and the settlement of the institution in which the element is stored. So we can have country Greece in this case, and settlement the town Hanya. And as for the MS name that we have seen in a couple of slides before, this is used for providing a standard name with which an item is known. For example, here we have the Rosetta Stone, and in this case we know both the standard name but also the repository and the repository number of this element. So we have all these elements, and we have the settlement, the repository, the ID number, the manuscript name, and in this example we are using also an alternative identifier inside which we have another ID number recording two different type of identifiers, but usually we do not have cases complex such as this one. And also the alt identifier can have a type specifying what type of identifier we are using. So again, this is useful if we have very different type of identifiers and we want to say something about them. But the majority of the cases we have simpler markup, such in this slide. So we can have a simple MS identifier with just a repository and the ID number if it's known. Otherwise, we can have something like in the second example, so just a manuscript name with nothing about its repository, and any number if we do not know. Well, in this case, we have the Rosetta Stone, for which we have seen that we know this information, but we could also choose to just use its common name instead of its repository. For example, if in the future it would have to be moved somewhere else, we could still refer to this as the Rosetta Stone without any reference to its repository at the British Museum. And some of this information, for example, about the names that with which we know some items, these can be found also in the publication statement part of the TI header. So you may also want to have a look at the guidelines about this section of the TI header for knowing what to put there if the repository, the MS identifier, is not appropriate for such information. Gabby, do you want to add anything more about repositories and identifiers?
No, I think that's great. Perfect.
Okay.